Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review Podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast, and to our listeners all across America and around the world. Now, the U.S. Census projects that the largest population growth in the U.S. is among the multiracial people of color. They estimate that by 2060, and perhaps even sooner, Caucasians alone will be only about 43% of the U.S. population, while the combined people of color will constitute about 57% of the U.S. population. Now, African Americans will grow to nearly 43 million in 2030, or 14.3% of the population. What's more, eMarketer estimates African Americans will have a combined buying power of over $1.5 trillion by 2023. That is up from $1.3 trillion in 2018. So why should this growth and buying power data about African Americans be of importance to the public relations community? Well, this should be a wake-up call to public relations practitioners that this is a viable market that many practitioners too often overlook, with possibly a financial and programmatic mistake. One solid means of reaching this market is by way of black-owned newspapers across the nation. The National Newspaper Publishers Association is the organization representing the 230 regional black-owned newspapers with more than 22 weekly readers. My guest today is a respected leader in this organization. Joining me today from Nashville, Tennessee is Rosetta Miller Perry, CEO and publisher of the Tennessee Tribune. It was founded in 1991 and recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. The newspaper has more than 200,000 weekly readers across Tennessee. She is a graduate of the University of Memphis and the Howard University School of Law, and also the publisher of Contemporary magazine, and she is a recipient of over 100 awards. She is among the most influential people in Nashville, Tennessee. So, Rosetta, thank you so very much for taking your time to chat with me today. So let's talk about, I would think, the increased need for public relations and other organizations to get engaged with black-owned newspapers to increase their community outreach projects. How do you feel about that, or what have you seen in your years of being with the Tennessee Tribune?
In the beginning, it was a very slow process, but now the Tennessee Tribune, we're overwhelmed with information coming to us, and it's almost impossible to even engage with them, with some of the public relations firms. I think one of the reasons is that the majority newspapers have cut the number of pages that they print, and so there's nowhere to send the information. So now they have to send their information to all the news outlets. And I think they use my newspaper a lot because I'm statewide.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets them, a lot more publicity.
Now, do you think many of the larger organizations, as I said, either the PR firms or maybe even government agencies and others, are they recognizing the change or increase in or the growth of the African American, or let's say people of color population as a whole, and the increase in their spending power? You think that helps as well?
Oh, yes. They know that African Americans spend a lot of money, and they also know that African America gets very little in return.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think it's interesting because I dug up a few statistics about that, and it says basically that by 2023, African Americans will have a combined buying power of over $1.5 trillion, and that's up from $1.3 trillion just in 2018. So, I mean, that should obviously come to a lot of people's attention.
It should, but that doesn't benefit us. We're spending, they are receiving. When does our community benefit? When? And part of it we can blame ourselves because our folks, a lot of them think that ice is colder on the other side. And they'll buy, just say, a majority newspaper that's attacking them, that runs stories about crime and whatever about them, and then buy my newspaper because somebody they know is in it, or there's something in it always about the 4 HBCUs and so forth. But I think African Americans basically just feel like if it's white, it's right. Mm-hmm. And we can't control that. I don't say that you shouldn't use or read majority newspapers because they're tied in so that they can get some news that we can't get. But I think if you want to be well balanced, if you want to know what's happening with our people, if you want to know someone was recently promoted to an admiral, you're not going to find that anywhere but in the black press. And that person could have graduated from TSU, went to school with somebody's mother, So our newspapers will inform our citizens about things that you will never see in the majority press. I was just talking to a black female airline pilot, 31 years old, in Atlanta. I'll be running that story soon. You're not going to read that in a majority paper. But in our paper, that's an inspiration for some young woman right here in Nashville.
It's interesting that you brought that up because probably, I'm going to say it was roughly 3 years ago, I ran across a similar story. I believe it was Delta on a flight from Atlanta to Nashville. Now, it wasn't planned. It was completely accidental simply because of rearranging of some scheduling problems. But it just so happened that all of the flight crew, not only were they all African-American, but they were all female. That was the pilot, the co-pilot, and all of the flight attendants, the entire crew, which was history-making in itself.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. That sort of great information just was neglected by the majority newspapers.
Right. Well, they have no interest in that, really. And you have to think it's more of them than us. So they're going to write about them.
So
that's where their money comes from.
I know, I understand. So how would you suggest that we get, or you, in fact, get more PR companies to send information that everybody in the community can benefit from? Are there opportunities for them to come visit you, or you come visit them, or place meetings that you can get together so that you can have those conversations?
I think that needs to be done. I do get information from PR firms, but they're out of New York or LA, etc. There's a lot going on in Nashville, and PR firms ought to know about it, and that information should be disseminated right here in Nashville in the Tennessee Tribune. Because people are coming in here all the time.
Well, needless to say, Nashville is one of the hottest cities in the U.S. right now not only in terms of population growth, but new firms coming to Nashville. Look like every year right now, and new buildings going up. It's like crabgrass, the high rises that are going up so fast around here. Yeah,
and they are bringing in top black executives. So, and they're not going to reach. They're not going to reach out to the black community, because usually when they come in, they move out to Hermitage or Brentwood, And I've met a few, and I'll ask, and where do you go to church? Well, I'm thinking they're going to name one of these local churches, but they go to white churches. I mean, they assimilate into the white community, so they don't even get to know us.
So I guess that becomes, because here in Nashville there are 2, maybe 3 black newspapers and publications. How can those new companies that have outreach efforts get to know you? How would you suggest that begin to happen?
Well, that's a difficult question. Most of these companies in Nashville know the Tennessee Tribune. You know, they read it, they know what's going on, because white people want to know what we're doing, what's out there, what's happening. So it's online, they read it, and they have to read it because I get the information when they hire. They let me know when they hire a black person on, executive. I don't go out looking for that. They send it to me.
Mm-hmm. So basically what I'm hearing you say is that those large or small PR firms really need to make an effort to reach out to you and include you in their outreach efforts.
Right.
Yeah, because like you said, you've been there for 30 years and probably one of the most influential people in Nashville, so they need to have some sort of connection with you so that there can be not only sending you information but also buying some advertising in your newspaper as well.
That's true.
I'm just wondering if, because I know that there's a public relations organization here, and perhaps maybe there's some attention should be drawn to this sort of gap, if you will, communications gap, where, yes, you're here, you have a service, that there needs to be some collaboration between you and them, or exchanges, so that information flows, if you will, both ways.
Yes. But see, they don't realize how important it is when they hire, to say, a young black male in a position. Because look at all the young males that we have, black males. They have other people to look up to now. You know, before, you asked a young man, who do you want to be? I want to be a preacher, mm-hmm. or a teacher, or a policeman, or a lawyer. That's all we had. Now, look at all the titles and all the different companies. So now they can aspire to be something else, like these folks they're bringing into, with all those titles. Because we got some smart young folks graduating from high school. And they can go into something other than those 4 categories that I just named. But how would they ever know that those positions are out there in those companies? And if they saw a black person in those positions, that's an inspiration.
As I listen to you, I'm thinking now, because the Public Relations Society of America really has a big push in terms of diversity. I'm not sure that there has been any discussion at that level of them engaging or involving black-owned newspapers in some of the things that they're doing. And I think this might be an excellent opportunity for them to hear of some of the things that they themselves could be doing to help that diversity and inclusion effort that they have underway.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I can tell you as a result of this conversation is that not only will I put it into the Public Relations Society of America, their open forum, and their diversity outreach and exchange, so that they can hear this, because it goes to every member of the PRSA around the country. So them hearing this, I think, hopefully will begin to spark some sort of effort to look at here's a gap in the outreach efforts that we have going on.
Mm-hmm. And there are other groups that need to be reached. Like we have Talk Teens. Now these are young African. Well, you know about them. Mm-hmm. But they're young African American males. All of them go on to college. But they can be inspired if they would see some African Americans in some other field, doing some other things. That's an inspiration. Some things that they may never have thought of, but brilliant enough to do if directed correctly. So.
Well, let me say, I'm going to make sure that our conversation today gets in front of the Diversity Inclusion Committee for the Public Relations Society. There's no question about that. Also, once what happens, of course, is that I'll put a notice of this program on Twitter, so it will go further out. But I think part of this is bringing the attention to the public relations community that more needs to be done for the PR firms to reach out to Black-owned newspapers, of which, by the way, there are 230 of them all around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And something else that I did not know, I mean, I looked up some of this information, and of those 230, you've got 22 million readers each week that are reading those newspapers.
Right.
In addition to that, not only do they have obviously the hard copy newspapers, but they've got readers on Facebook, of which there are 12 million readers, 15 million Twitter followers, and 10 million on Instagram. So going to these newspapers has followers not only, with the hard copy editions, but the digital editions, which a lot of people do look at and use on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Well, let me just ask you real quick then, what other things would you suggest to public relations people as a whole in an effort to have a better linkage and communications avenue, if you will, with the Black-owned newspapers?
What can I say?
Well, let me ask you this. Would it be worthwhile to suggest that the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which is the organization representing all of them, have a chance to present something to the Public Relations Association of America at one of their annual meetings? Would that make sense?
You mean would NNPA do a presentation, or you do the presentation to us?
Well, as a matter of fact, it could work both ways, I think, but at least put the NNPA and the Public Relations Society in contact with each other as a way of exchanging information, or how can we help each other do A, B, C, and D?
Yeah, I think that you should contact NNPA and ask to be part of their spring or fall or any of their national meetings, to be on their program.
Mm-hmm.
And, tell them how we can work together.
That's the sort of thing I think will work. Well, in addition, not only suggest this to them, but also make sure that they hear this coming from you, because you've been involved with the NNPA for just a bunch of years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
Oh, good.
That would be good, because we have different people with presentations, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But this could be very beneficial.
Okay. Well, while I'm thinking about it, any other thoughts you might have for organizations better engaged with Black newspapers around the country?
But you should be engaged with the Black press, because you have to get your information out there, and that's one way to get it out there. And you can also suggest, because we're on the web every now and all the time. You can also suggest that you're one of the speakers on the website to talk about a relationship with NNPA.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. So, Rosetta, let me thank you for taking time.
That's a nationwide thing.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just want to say thank you so very much for taking time from your busy day to talk to me today.
Okay. Good talking to you.
Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
My guest today was Rosetta Miller Perry. She is the CEO and publisher of the Tennessee Tribune in Nashville, Tennessee. If you've enjoyed this very straightforward, no-holds-barred conversation, I sure would appreciate a rating from you, and we look forward to having you here again for the next edition of the Public Relations Review podcast. Thank you.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review podcast, and have a great day.